solutions to be ready, thinking about the average lifetime of the assets of the trucks, of the ships. And a ship has a 20-year average lifetime, so they need to be commercially viable by 2030. Now, of course, the whole it needs to be the choice in 2030. Again, the Steer Coalition is a partnership between the Global Maritime Forum and the World Economic Forum. At cop26 last year, more than 240 maritime companies and organizations from across the globe and value chain presented a call to action for shipping decarbonization to global policymakers, asking them to take ambitious policy action. And signatories to this call to action are already fully committed and taking action, but also stress the need to work together with governments. Shipping accounts for almost 3% of global emissions, similar to aviation. And shipping is responsible for around 80% of world trade. So it's fundamental to decarbonize shipping if we want to decarbonize our economy. All companies and governments must support shipping decarbonization if they're serious about reducing Scope 3 emissions. Emissions from shipping can be divided in international and domestic shipping, 70% and 30% respectively. For international shipping, we have the International Maritime Organization that regulates emissions from ships. And in 2018, the IMO set an emission level of reducing emissions by 50% compared to in 2050 compared to 2008. This is, however, far from delivering shipping's fair share of the global reductions aligned with IPCC science and the 1.5 temperature goal. Luckily, governments and the IMO now have a window of opportunity to raise ambition as the IMO will adopt a new strategy next year in July 2021. For domestic shipping, governments are responsible and should include emissions in their NDCs, but to date, not many governments have. Crossing international and domestic shipping emissions, we also have EU regulation, and the EU is right now finalizing its Fit for 55 policy package, and will very soon regulate both international and domestic shipping emissions within European jurisdiction through, for example, a fuel standard, the ETS, and other specific regulation. But here there's also room for improvement to get to the point we need to go to. So let me just quickly explain how shipping's decarbonization transition could play out. Looking at other historical transition phases, we know that there are three phases: an emergence phase, where we're now, a diffusion phase, and a reconfiguration phase. So we're in the emergence phase, focused on learnings and driving down costs. Right now, we don't have everything on the water. We don't have the cheap new fuels. In the diffusion phase, we will have the cost-competitive, scalable zero-emission fuels and commercially viable zero-emission vessels. And this will allow the market to effectively scale up the new solutions. We know that to be able to reach this diffusion phase, we need to reach this tipping point of 5% scalable zero-emission fuels in use in international shipping. And we will have the zero-emission vessels that are commercially viable. So that is what we need to aim for in this decade. To do this, shipping companies alone and together with governments can work to establish, for example, green pilot and demonstration projects. A green corridor is a fit-for-purpose solution because they can be deployed now as a form of special economic zone at sea and be driven by first-mover action. We also know that in this decade, not everyone will need to decarbonize in this emergence phase. What is important, though, is that everyone begin to plan for how they will be part of the diffusion phase. How will they be ready to buy the new vessels in 2030? How will companies be able to deliver the new fuels in 2030? So we need to start planning today. Also, thinking about enabling an inclusive and equitable and effective scale-up and uptake of zero-emission fuels, technologies, and vessels, as many countries as possible should be engaged in some form in this decade. But will the vessels be built if there's no or low supply of fuels? Will energy companies produce or distribute the fuels if there's no or only low demand for vessels and fuels? So the good news is that we already know what to do and how to do it. And there are many opportunities, and there's actually a lot of finance just waiting for the right policy signal to begin to invest in the new fuels and vessels. We're already seeing many green corridors being announced, for example, Shanghai, LA, Singapore, Rotterdam, Australia, and North Asia. And we know that EU regulation can drive this as well. There's significant potential for renewable energy in developing countries, and finance is ready. So to end my talk, I just want to emphasize that the IMO has this opportunity next year to set the right policy signals to enable countries to develop new energy projects with shipping as the key off-taker of new fuels. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Lau, for this very informational crash course. I would like now to introduce Mr. Chris Hook. Chris is the head of global sustainability at Uber. Chris leads Uber global sustainability strategy work, working with leaders and team across the company, including mobility, delivery, and freight, to shape Uber's collective response to the climate emergency. Chris, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for having us, and thank you for the panelists for giving us so much information about how transport needs to shift across all the different modes. I'm going to talk a little bit about the work that we're doing at Uber and the focus that we have on decarbonising mobility in cities all over the world to move to a cleaner future. We have an ambition at Uber to be the cleanest platform on earth across all of the businesses that we operate. Our Uber Rides business is focused on moving people from where they are to where they need to be, our delivery business, our freight business, and all the ways in which we can reimagine the way the world moves for the better. For us, that means getting as quickly as we possibly can to 100% zero emissions transport. We set ourselves a target to be 100% electric in Europe, the US, and Canada by 2030, everywhere we operate by 2040. We think we can see a path to get there, but there are three key things that we need to do. We need to help those who earn their living on Uber to make that transition as quickly as possible. We need to build products and services that the people who use Uber every day love and come back to. And we need to report on our progress and be transparent and participate in discussions like this one as we get there. Because as all of the panelists have said, no single company or single entity is going to be able to make this transition by themselves. So how are we helping our drivers go electric? Well, we talk all the time to those who earn their living through Uber about what it is we need to do to help them get into an EV. The good news is that the appetite exists. There's an excitement about this transition. For unlike some of the other sectors that we talked about, passenger transportation has an opportunity in the near term to go quickly on this journey, but it isn't perfect today. We have to try and address some core barriers. Electric vehicles are expensive and more expensive in most places than their combustion engine equivalents, so we need to do work to bring that cost down. There's concerns about how the charging infrastructure will work, how that rollout will happen in cities all over the world. And there's a knowledge gap. Companies like us and many of you in the room can do more to tell the story about why this is such a necessary transition and how we make it happen. The work that we're doing is to use our reach through our app and our technology to help build new ways in which drivers can learn about electric vehicles, can get access to them through partnerships, and can make that transition happen. We're all over the world designing programs to incentivize that transition to happen sooner, to providing discounts, through providing incentives, helping to run saving schemes so people can build up the capital that's required to invest in these vehicles. We're similarly trying to work with companies to roll out charging infrastructure, particularly infrastructure close to where people live, that they can use for those people who rely on that vehicle as their source of income. They can then be sure that there's reliable, clean infrastructure charging vehicles, and advocating with governments and with lots of organisations for the kind of policies that are going to make this transition happen quickly and happen equitably, and ensure that everybody can make the shift in the time frame that we need them to. One of the key ways that we can do that as a company is to build products that people want to use and people want to come back to. So over the last couple of years, we've been focused heavily on how we build out options for those of us who use Uber to do so in a cleaner way. We have a product called Uber Green that's available in over 100 places across the world, where riders can select to get a trip that's only in an electric vehicle or a hybrid vehicle. We have an equivalent version of that in the US, which is our biggest market, called Comfort Electric, where you can select a premium EV vehicle. We have lots of different ways in which we're trying to move people to travel in lower emissions vehicles and to travel in more sustainable ways through sharing their ride, grouping together with others, thinking responsibly about how their trip can have a lower footprint. That also means not cars. It also means us working to ensure that people can use transit systems and make that part of their journey. They can use other forms of mobility, bikes, scooters, other ways to get from point A to point B. If we are successful in our mission, then we will move car journeys into electric cars, but we will also be able to offer people a wider range of options about how they make the trip that they need to make. We think that it's so far going quite well. We started this journey back in 2020. A year ago, you can see there in Glasgow, we had about 14,000 electric vehicles operating in the platform. We're now up to about 37,000. We've seen a big increase in the pace of adoption, and we're seeing people really get into these cars where they can make that transition happen, and that turns into a lot of trips. People use Uber all over the world. That means 19.5 million people getting to experience this product every day, and we would hope to see this graph go up very rapidly over the next few years. And then finally, we feel like it's important that we build partnerships to make this happen, and we tell people what we are doing, what we're finding difficult, where the challenges are, so we can collaborate. The other panelists have said it too, but partnership is vitally important. For us, that means working with the car manufacturing industry, both established players and new players, to build those relationships and ensure those vehicles are available and accessible, and starting to build a whole network of relationships across the charging industry, so that as that industry matures and develops, it does so in a way that allows everybody to get these cars quickly. And it means working with a lot of different organisations to advocate for the kind of policies that we need collectively to make this transition happen. And finally, it means us being transparent about what we're doing, committing to things like science-based targets, committing to reporting through the TCFD, producing information, participating in events like today, so that we can tell our story and we can also learn from others as we're on this journey. So thank you very much for the time, and thank you for letting us talk about how we want to be part of this solution.
So thank you very much for our speakers this afternoon. Let's open up the floor for questions. Let's do two audience for questions.
So we'll give to sir and the hand. I think the mic, yes, you. Okay. You go first.
Thank you very much. It's a very informative session. I have many questions, but for time, just I will ask one question for Andrea. You mentioned that it's very important when you talked about the public-private purchase team, and you need to collaborate with your competitors. But what's about the supply chain regarding your business, regarding the suppliers, the manufacturers, distributors, all the rest of the members of the supply chain? I think it's very important if you highlight this. I know, of course, you do this, but I didn't find this in the presentation. It's very important, I think, rather than to talk about the collaboration with competitors. Of course, we need to collaborate with others, but I think the supply chain members is the backbone of the business regarding the, if you want to reach what's called zero gas emissions, either through the carbon storage or find zero carbon renewable sources of energy and so on. So this one question, and the rest I will ask in the break. Thank you very much.
My question is for Lau. I wanted to know if you could speak on how do you think policy could incentivize innovation for the decarbonization of maritime transport, particularly considering you gave quite an ambitious goal for net zero emissions.
Thank you for the questions. Let's go with Andrea first and then Lau.
Thank you very much for this question. And you're absolutely right. We have to decarbonize our own supply network. And this is exactly the focus area of the First Movers Coalition. It is the supply network, which has to be decarbonized. And when you just think about our company, I have 50,000 direct supply partners. So if I go down a little bit in the chain, then we talk about millions of companies, and you think, bloody hell, how do you want to decarbonize this network? So we took a very pragmatic approach. We looked into what are the key materials in our products. And then we came to that the highest content in our products is steel and die casting parts. And therefore, without going to part by part, supplier by supplier, it was clear this is where we have to start to decarbonize. And therefore, we went into a partnership with the Swedish steel producer SSAB, and we were the first who could show this year a commercial vehicle built out of fossil-free steel. We handed over to the customer, and now it's in daily use in the operation. So we will now go through material by material. The next is aluminium, where we also make clear commitments to decarbonize, but we will also then go to polymers, electronics, etc. So this is how we do it. But when we talk about greenhouse gas neutral value chain 2040, it includes our supply network.
Yeah, thank you for the question. So policy can, for international shipping, the IMO can set the pathway that shipping needs to follow. So industry knows when to decarbonize at what level. In 2030, should that be 50% reductions? 2040, should that be 80-90%? So governments and the IMO can set that those targets for shipping, but also deciding on a carbon tax, carbon levy. That revenue can then be spent on shipping decarbonization through different mechanisms that can go into specific projects. The EU is doing the same with the inclusion of shipping in the ETS. That revenue can go into the EU's innovation fund and other projects for shipping to then invest in different innovative technologies.
So to wrap up, I'll ask each of our panelists in 30 seconds to describe how can we work together to decarbonize the transport sector based on what we've seen today in the presentations. Let us start perhaps with Nicolas.
So I think it's a great moment to work in the transport sector. It used to be a bit of a boring sector run by engineers where not of many things was happening. today is totally different. There is every single mode from all angles of stakeholders, civil society, private sector, institutions, government. Everybody is looking hard, and you have these all these ideas that are coming. So it's really an exciting moment to partner, and I'm encouraged by the discussion today. It's not only here, but in every forum that you go today in the international community talking about transport decarbonization, you can feel that energy.
Thank you. Chris.
I think the most important thing we can do is work together, and I think we all talked about partnerships, and I think we need to push each other to raise our level of ambition and try and get the technologies that we need to scale, and affordability means that everybody can make that switch in the time frame that we need, because we have very little time to make this happen.
Yeah, I think absolutely right that we need to work together. And as I said, we also in parallel with that need policies to set the goals and the price mechanisms. But we also need to push each other. So one example is the cargo owners for zero-emission vessels. A lot of companies like IKEA, Nestle, DHL, they have said we will only ship our a lot of cargo volume with zero-emission vessels by 2040. So they're saying to shipping companies, if you don't do this, you can't do business with us. So I think we also need to push each other in a good direction.
For me, it's very simple. Just start your actions. Don't stop talking, start to do something. Don't wait for legislation, don't wait for politics, don't wait for anyone to kick you. Just do it.
Last words from Seattle Leva Hassan.
Just to cooperate to advance technology between institutes and companies and country to deliver this action and keep the policy out to what is right.
So with that, I think that was a wrap up of our session. I hope you all enjoyed it. And thank you all for coming today. Thank you.
I want to cut.